Hi, everyone. Hey, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Jonathan Jassey, and I'm the founding pediatrician with Concierge Pediatrics. We are a concierge office that has two locations on Long Island, New York, and one in New Jersey. Welcome to tonight's webinar. We are talking about a very important topic that has brought everybody together here, and that is celiac disease, which for those of you that don't know, celiac disease is a serious autoimmune disease that occurs in genetically predisposed people where the ingestion of gluten leads to damage in the small intestine. It is estimated to affect 1 in 100 people worldwide, but only about 30% are properly diagnosed. And that's a very important thing to discuss with your pediatrician, because there could be many symptoms that could be getting missed. A lot of people takes a long time to get diagnosed with it. It could be chronic abdominal pain, diarrhea, distension. It could be chronic headaches. One of the most important parts of a checkup is how are we growing in both height and weight. And I've had plenty of kids in my career that I picked up celiac that were not showing symptoms of anything outside of not growing in both height and weight. So those are very important. And it's important to then start get testing done from your, pediatrician, or if you have to go to a GI doctor. We're very big at Concierge on. We're very equipped and adapt on checking for these type of things and checking panels, checking for genetic predisposition for it. And if we're positive for any of these lab testing, we're sending to the GI doctor for confirmation from an endoscopy. But when people with celiac disease eat gluten, which is a protein found in wheat, rye, and barley, their body mounts an immune response that attacks the small intestine. These attacks can lead to damage on the villi, which are small finger-like projections that line the small intestine that promote nutrient absorption. When the villi gets damaged, nutrients cannot be absorbed properly into the body. Celiac disease is hereditary, meaning that it runs in families. People with a first degree relative with celiac disease have a 1 in 10 risk of developing celiac disease. And it can develop at any age after people start consuming gluten. Left untreated, celiac disease can lead to additional serious health problems. We are excited to be led in this educational discussion by Dr. Ali and Staci Leibson. Dr. Ali is a registered dietitian and doctor of clinical nutrition who operates Nutrition by Dr. Alexandra. Staci Leibson is a certified life coach and owner of the Celiac Shift. Tonight, we're here to talk about the social, emotional, and physical management of celiac disease. Both Staci and Dr. Ali will share some expert insights from both a medical and parenting perspective, and we'll all do some Q&A at the end. Thank you to all who submitted your questions during registration. We got over 90 questions, and we'll do our best to address your most common questions during the Q&A portion. And with that, I'll hand it off to our speakers.
Thank you, Dr. Jassey. I think you're the best of the best. Hi, I'm Staci Leibson, a life coach for individuals and parents of individuals who are diagnosed with celiac disease.
And hi, guys. My name is Dr. Ali. I am a registered dietitian and doctor of clinical nutrition. And I am super excited to be here with Staci, who is such a wealth of information, and Dr. Jassey, who is a comprehensive, amazing pediatrician, to talk about this special topic, celiac disease. So let's get into it. Dr. Jassey did an amazing job of describing the physiology, which is just a really big word to say medically what is happening inside of your body with celiac disease. So he spoke about the villi, and I want you to look at the picture of a healthy small intestine. I'll give you a little anatomy lesson. So when we put food into our mouth, we chew it, we swallow it, it goes down our esophagus into our stomach, and from there it goes into our small intestine. The job of our intestines is to take the nutrients that we eat in food and to put them into our blood so that we can use them for many different factors. That's how we grow big and tall and so on. So what happens in celiac disease is those finger-like projections, which do a really good job of taking food from inside of your small intestine and bring it into your bloodstream. When barley, rye, wheat, and sometimes oats are ingested, the immune system has a response. It looks at these typically harmless ingredients as a problem. And this immune response, what it does is it takes those healthy fingers and it makes them small and it shrinks them inwards. And what happens is that those nutrients that we need to get big and strong in the bloodstream, we have some inflammation, and we can even have some malabsorption of things like vitamins that we need in our blood. So this is the problem that we are talking about. Now, something that I consider extremely optimistic is that management of a strict lifelong gluten-free diet is the treatment. And the reason that this is awesome is because it's one of the only conditions where diet can actually be used as the gold standard in treatment. So we understand that celiac disease requires a naturally or a gluten-free diet, and this is the reason why. And I explained the physiology, so I won't talk about it anymore, but we understand what happens and how that impacts our body's health. What I want to talk to, so my job is as a registered dietitian, is essentially to teach you how to eat in a way where you're feeling good and you're growing, you're getting big and tall, and you're reaching those health goals. Dr. Jassey talked about the role of the pediatrician, and he said, my biggest concern is making sure that they are reaching their height goals and they're reaching their weight goals. So my biggest role as the registered dietitian is to make sure that while following a strictly gluten-free diet, we are reaching height goals and weight goals and doing it in a way that is actually promoting good nutrition. So I get the question all the time, how is my kid supposed to eat? And I'm not going to give you specifics on how your kid's supposed to eat, but I'm going to present to you what I call, and what the government calls, the My Plate. And I just want you to notice here, right? What do we see on the plate? We see a fruit, a vegetable, a protein, and a grain. When we are looking at the grain section, that's where we typically think of gluten. It doesn't mean that we won't find gluten if proteins are prepared with gluten, fruits, vegetables, packaged goods, and so on. But the first thing that any healthy growing kid needs is they need to learn how to make this plate look like their plate. And that's my role, is to teach how to develop a sustainable and balanced diet to reach those height and weight goals so that we're promoting general health alongside management of celiac disease. So the first thing we've looked at is a balanced gluten-free diet. Kids grow. We know that. So what do they need? They need nutrients that are important, such as iron, calcium, B vitamins, fiber, and so on. So my role is to play detective, and it's to help teach you how do we get these nutrients from our food specifically, right? So number one role of nutrition is to make sure that we're not having big gaps. And if there are big gaps, we're learning how to use real foods to help fill the gaps. The second thing that I tend to find super important is teaching your kid the eloquent balance between a food that is naturally gluten-free and a food that is processed to be gluten-free. So the bones of a diet, we're going to look for lean proteins, fruits, veggies, and grains. Now, we live in a world where luckily there are many, many options. There's so much variety on the market for gluten-free foods, and there even are carbohydrates that are rich in fiber, rich in protein, that have been fortified to be naturally gluten-free. So secondarily, it's finding the balance between serving your kid whole foods and then integrating in snack foods and so on. The third role that we want to focus on is going to be monitoring growth. And that's going to be the job of the pediatrician. So asking the question, is my child's diet, or if it's you with celiac disease, is my diet doing what it needs to do to promote my growth, to promote my muscles, to promote healthy red blood cells and promote labs that aren't filled with deficiencies? And then finally, first we use food. And then if we ever need to fill the gaps, that's when working individualized with your dietitian and doctor. If supplements are needed, it's the last resort, but we're going to look for foods first. So when you're thinking about creating a balanced diet for yourself or your kid, we stick to the basics, right? We want whole foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and carbohydrates. And secondarily is we want to use our food for benefit, meaning we want to get those energy-loving nutrients, calcium, vitamin D, iron from the foods that we're eating. And then finally, if we need to, supplementation has its role, but that's after we've tried to use a diet to make it very nice and balanced. Now, this is something that I'm very passionate about. It's called the division of responsibility. And what we're trying to do is generate a healthy and calm relationship with food for your kids. And I understand that that's something that Staci's going to talk even more detail about. But from the perspective of the dietitian, your kid is learning their habits in these, you know, early childhood adolescence. They're learning their relationship with food and body. And I think something important for a parent to understand is what is the parent's role and what is the child's role, right? And the parent's role is to guide a safe food environment. So it's doing something like you've done tonight by coming to this call and seeking for the education of how do I create a nutritionally balanced, complete meal for my child, and what do I need to look at for celiac disease? We know that there are risks, especially when we're going into the world and we're eating out and we're buying snacks and so on. So that's the parent's role, right? Is to first acquire that information and create the safe food environment. And secondarily, it's with the help of, it could be with the help of the dietitian, the doctor, the life coach, and the therapist, and so on, is to teach the kid how to live within the restriction and how to manage self-management. My patients have heard me say it's the parent's role to serve the food, and it's the child's role to learn how to positively interact with the food and to push and encourage themselves to grow in picky eating and food fears. And collectively, with the parent and the kid come together and they create a really strong collaboration to reach health and nutrition goals. So that's the division of responsibility. And that's where a lot of the growth that happens when it comes to any type of pediatric disorder that is going to involve food. Now, what I want to teach you, and I want this to be your second biggest learning curve from tonight. The first is we need whole foods. We need to make my plate look like your plate, and we need to learn how to get your kid to eat a variety of nutrients, right? And figure out how to make gluten-free work in that. The second thing, label reading. Of course, we are looking for gluten-free. In an ideal world, we're looking for certified gluten-free, but we're learning how to pinpoint what are gluten-containing nutrients and what do we have to be cautious of on a package. But as a dietitian, it's not just that it's gluten-free, it's is it gluten-free, but also going to be supportive of your kids' needs. So I will give you the very quick crash course on looking at the label. This is what we're looking at. We want to, of course, look at the portion size. Why? Because if the portion size is 4 and we're going to eat 10, then the label doesn't necessarily matter. The second thing is that we want to look at, and this could be for a kid that needs to gain weight, right? If they've just received a diagnosis, this can also be important for a kid that is, we're focusing on gentle weight management. We're going to look at the calories. We're going to look at the carbohydrate contribution. And then something that I always like to look at is the added sugar. So if you look at number 3, we're looking at added sugar, fiber, and protein. So getting to know the labels and then teaching your child how to read the labels so that when you're going into the grocery store, we're going in with intention. I'm looking for a snack that's yummy. I'm looking for something that doesn't go in the refrigerator. I'm looking for something that doesn't have a lot of added sugar, something that has some protein to help me grow tall. And we're figuring out what is the portion size so we know what to put into our lunchbox. So label reading is not just a skill for gluten-free, but it's super important when we're looking for, of course, gluten-free, but we're also looking for something that contains those, essential nutrients in a super balanced and productive way. So the role of the registered dietitian, and this is always what I say, is it's having someone help pick up on those playing detective for nutrient gaps and teaching both you as the patient or the individual with celiac disease and the parent how to have a balanced and sustainable gluten-free diet. Also having those conversations to make this feel more sustainable and not feel so scary. And then it's collaborating with those other disciplines like the pediatrician and the school and so on. It is with my honor now to invite Staci and then Jude to share more on the role of the life coach and really give us insight as to what is it like living with celiac disease. So thank you guys so much. Staci, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we are so lucky to learn from you. So I'm Staci. My son Jude. And I am going to be focusing on the social and emotional part of this diagnosis. Allie, whenever you can, you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So when your child is diagnosed with celiac disease, there is a general sense that you are very, very overwhelmed. You are grappling with losing what you had. Most people that I interact with, including myself, are devastated. Life as you know it and the convenient, fluid way of life is over. I work with a lot of parents who place the blame on themselves. How did this happen? And we go through it. It's not something you did, it's just something that is. And you go through a natural roller coaster of a true grievance process until you get to the acceptance phase. And it's really important to know that you probably are going to have to tell your child about the diagnosis prior to getting to your own mental sane place. Something I speak a lot about on my social media and in my coaching is the ways to tell your child, depending on their age, how they have this disease. And the one thing I want you to take away from tonight is it's so important to focus on the positives and the amazing things that can happen while having celiac disease and not just taking away the loss and the negatives. So where do we begin? You begin in your home because your home is where you spend majority of your time. And there is so much debate online about having a totally gluten-free home or having what they call a mixed home. And I am here tonight to tell you that the truth is you'll hear a million people's opinions about what's right and what's wrong. And there really is no right and wrong. It's what feels best for you and your family and your lifestyle. So the main thing is picking something that feels right for you. In our home, we personally have a mixed household. We have Safe for Celiac for Jude and gluten products, and that's what works for us. You will know that it's right for you when you start to feel like your new normal is in place and you're in a really good flow. If it feels too complicated several months after going gluten-free, that home environment is not what's best for your family. Next, you've changed over your house, but you are not the only one interacting with your child who has celiac disease. So first and foremost, if there is a spouse, partner, someone that is co-parenting your child, it's very important to be on the same page as them. And then next is getting the siblings of the individual involved, if that individual with celiac disease has siblings. Siblings play such an important role in this diagnosis, and giving them a title and a purpose is huge. Siblings can be a part of your safety team in your house, and they can help you read through labels and find good products and really be a hype person for the individual who is diagnosed with celiac disease. Something that I get asked all the time is grandparents, aunts, uncles, they just think I'm being picky or annoying, and they don't want to follow the quote unquote rules. This is unfortunately too common, but very solvable. First, it starts with an honest conversation about what celiac disease is and how Dr. Allie spoke about how the best gold standard for an individual with celiac disease is to remove gluten from their diet. So it comes from a very practical place and rational place, not a rule, not controlling, just what your child needs to really thrive. And next, you print out a one-pager. That is one of my favorite go-to tips to be on the same page and coordinate the management of the individual with celiac disease. Make it very direct and simple. This toaster is for gluten-free only. And the simpler you make it, the more likely people are to follow it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about confidence and advocacy. Many of you see Jude online advocating for himself, and you do a wonderful job, but that does not happen overnight. And I think one of the things when I was thinking about this presentation that I really want you guys to walk away with is advocacy and confidence around this disease takes time. It takes having really intense and emotional or fun and jovial conversations, all of the above, with your kid. You have to know that at a young age, it's very hard for them to advocate. They might be shy, they might be embarrassed. And as they grow and get older, you can have more and more conversations with them of how they can best advocate for themselves. One thing coming from my background is teaching, I was a special ed teacher, I feel incredibly passionate about is the need for a 504 plan. In school, that is in the United States, if you're watching from the United States, that is your child's absolute best legal protection. The school might want to push on you a health plan or any other document. That is not acceptable. That is not going to protect your child. And that is not the best way for you to advocate for your child. So in the United States, if you have a child school age, I highly, highly recommend insisting that they get a 504 plan. Now, how does a life coach help? My role is really to help you thrive. I hear people saying often, I'm just surviving. And you know what? You don't need to survive. You can thrive. There's a lot of mind shift work that we do and a lot of systems that we put into place to make your life as the parent of an individual with celiac disease and the child's life enriched and easier. I really take the need for Google and almost, I don't want to say throw Google away, but I am your emotional, social sounding board throughout this entire process.
Okay. Thank you, Staci and Dr. Ali. That was awesome. This has been really, really helpful with tons of information. And we're so grateful to have you both available tonight to give your expertise. I know we got a few questions from parents that I'd love to go through with you and get your thoughts. So we could start a question for Staci and Jude. Do you have advice for family members who insist on eating your child's favorite food they can't have?
Yes, I do. I think that it's okay that they're eating the food that your child can't have. I think your role is to teach your child to be resilient and know that it's okay if someone's eating a food that they love. You can do that by substituting the food and giving them a food they love, or you can simply do that by building up resiliency in your own child to know that there unfortunately are going to be things that they want and they just can't have. And we can only control ourselves. We can't control other people. And once you better understand that you're really only in control of yourself, your confidence and resiliency will skyrocket.
That's great. Another question for you guys.
You're a little cut out. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
You're back.
Does eating out ever become fun again?
Do you want to answer this?
Yeah.
Okay, so introduce yourself.
So my name is Jude Leibson. You may have seen me on the celiac shift, but I just wanted to answer this question because me and my mom have been on a lot of adventures.
I'm on the nod. Okay, go.
I have been on a lot of adventures. Sometimes we go to the city to eat out, like a special date for the one who has celiac and the one who eats with me to just have an adventure together, explore new places, and yeah.
Such great advice. It is true. You can enjoy eating out again. There's no reason why you wouldn't enjoy eating out again. There's plenty of foods that you can enjoy even though you have celiac disease. And like Jude said, You can make anything fun. Make it an adventure. Go on a scavenger hunt for the best gluten-free cookie you ever had, for the best gluten-free lo mein you've ever had. If you're home and you're cooking, do a taste test. Anything that you do, you can sprinkle a little fun into it, and life and eating out can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jude. Amazing. I have a question that I'm gonna take this one myself. How can we know that the gluten-free diet is helping heal the gut? Well, there's a lot of different ways that we can determine if things are healing. I mean, it depends what the presenting symptom began as. If we have somebody that's failure to thrive or faltering on the growth curve, we should see a quick improvement. And especially when we're following it, whether it's every 3 to 6 months or on a year-to-year checkup, we should see improvement in that. You could see improvement in their symptoms. You know, if they were somebody who's coming in with chronic abdominal pain, that might be better. Chronic diarrhea may be better. Chronic abdominal distension could be better. Chronic headaches may be better. There's a lot of different things there that could be improved. And then just with some blood markers may be improved too. You know, you can have, if we had any iron deficiency anemia, that should be significantly better. All of our celiac numbers that on the blood work that may have been abnormal to begin with should be improved if we're really gluten-free. And then if we have to get scoped again, that, you know, those results should be improved as well. So I think it depends on what the, you know, initial presenting symptoms were at, but generally all those stuff should be getting better from there. Dr. Ali, I have a question for you. How much do I have a question that somebody asked. How much do I put in my child's hands to have to share and ask?
Yes, good question. We had cut out, but I had gotten most of that question. Dr. Jassey, do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So I think it's really important, and it's kind of what I was speaking of, the division of responsibility. It really depends at what age your kid is at, and of course, how much autonomy they have in making the appropriate choice. So I think that the first thing, as Staci was talking about, is one, educating yourself and setting up your own physical environment for success. If that's their school environment, their home environment, their after school schedule environment. And then from them, it's really teaching them what is it that's safe for them, and really checking for understanding. And I think that that's the most important thing. And that's, you know, a really big tool that's used in counseling is of course, there's always step number one, which is education, educating the parent, educating the kid. And then step two is checking for understanding, right? And it's going to go past just checking for understanding of, do you understand that you are gluten-free, but really putting them to, and it's not necessarily a test, but putting their skills to action, right? Are they able to decipher if something has gluten in it? Are they able to pick up a package and see if it is gluten-free? Are they able to advocate for themselves in the lunchroom? Are they able to advocate for themselves when they're at their friend's house? And the best way to know if your kid has those skills is to put their skills to test and see if they're able to teach it back to you and they've shown to be successful multiple times. Then it's okay to kind of hand off some of that responsibility to them.
Okay. And Dr. Ali, can you talk a little bit more about the nutrient deficiency and its effect on mental and emotional health?
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good question. And I think that when the words nutrient deficiency come up, there's two ways to think about it. There's calorie deficiency, right? Or there's macronutrient deficiency, meaning they're not getting enough protein, or they're not getting enough fiber, or they're not meeting their daily growing energy needs to grow tall and strong. So that's not necessarily nutrient deficiency, but that's not taking in adequate and enough calories. And then the secondary side of that is micronutrient deficiency, which is vitamins. And that's going to show, and that's why you follow with, you know, a doctor that's really drawing blood work and looking for markers of success. But that's when you're going to see things like, you know, typical iron deficiency, or could be B12 or folate. And that's when the doctor really can, you know, take a look at it and see things like the size of the red blood cells and so on. With that being said, we understand that kids, because of the way they're growing, we always are going to want to promote iron-rich foods. We're always going to want to promote calcium-rich foods. We're always going to want to take a general look at the diet and see, are there big gaps, right? So if your kid doesn't take in any dairy, this isn't necessarily gluten, but if they're not taking in any dairy, then a nutrient that comes to my mind is calcium and vitamin D. So it's really one looking backwards at the diet and then looking forwards and looking at the blood work and trying to kind of connect the two. It's not always deficiency that makes a child not feel well. It could be a combination of a gluten contamination or under eating or eating too many foods that are high in sugar and void of nutrients.
Yeah, that's great. I know there's a few more questions that have come up in the Q&A. Staci, there's a couple of questions in regards to 504 plans. So I'm going to let you take that one away.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think the question was 504 plans in public schools in the United States, and the answer is yes. That's exactly where you get the 504 plan, in your public school. It is your legal right in the United States of America to get a 504 plan. I hear often that schools are pushing these health plans. A health plan is not a legally binding document. You are entitled to a 504 plan. So it is my recommendation that you write the principal, the psychologist, and the teacher a letter stating that your child, with the letter, you're going to have to show proof that the child has a diagnosis of celiac disease and a request to obtain a health plan, a health 504 plan. I think the other question in the chat was from Canada. Am I
Yes,
correct? I don't have the
correct.
chat up.
Yeah, it was how would you go about dealing with school administrators who are not supportive? I live in Canada and we don't have a 504 plan, having issues with the snack programs and hot lunches not being inclusive to students who have celiac disease.
That is terrible. And I'm going to tell you, whoever's writing that, message me because I'm happy to help you. You can start by, I'm sure you have already tried, but I think you can start by doing some research to who provides the snacks and the hot lunch meals to your school. Who is the distributor? And if I was you, I would call the distributor and see if they provide an option of gluten-free. And if they do, I would circle back with your school and tell them that you've already done the legwork and that this company that they use provides gluten-free. If they don't, message me and we'll work on a secondary plan. Also, I'm sorry, I just want to add one more thing. Stop at nothing. Jude's school district, prior to Jude being diagnosed, did not have celiac safe options. And it was my mission to get it for the entire district. And I would not take no for an answer. It's unacceptable. So if you're having that issue, please feel free to message me.
That's great. Very insightful. Thank you, Staci. I'll take this last one that came in. Question. I know that celiac is related to food ingested, but my child gets a rash and itchiness if she even touches gluten. Does that mean that she has an allergy as well? And that's a great question, and one that many parents of kids with celiac disease can wonder about. But there's a key distinction. It's, celiac disease versus a possible wheat allergy. And celiac disease is really more of an autoimmune condition. It's not an allergy. And when someone with celiac eats gluten, their immune system is attacking the lining of the small intestine. And whereas wheat allergy is more of something called an IgE-mediated allergic reaction to proteins in wheat, and you can have different symptoms of that, whether it's hives, itching, swelling, wheezing, even for some kids, vomiting, and that can happen even in minutes to a couple of hours after the exposure. But you can just have a skin contact reaction, and it could just be by touching gluten or wheat, and that's not typical of a celiac disease. Because in celiac disease, skin contact alone doesn't cause an immune attack or rash unless the gluten is actually ingested there. So possible explanations, you never know. It can have a wheat allergy, can just have a contact dermatitis, just like somebody who eats tomato sauce or something acidic and touches the face, it could become red and inflamed. That doesn't mean we're having an allergic reaction. It could just be a contact dermatitis to the acidity of that food. Yes, that was a great question on that front. All right. Well, I
Dr.
think
John,
we,
I
yeah,
see, Dr. John, I see a couple more questions that I think we could answer, if that's okay with you.
yeah,
I can answer them quickly if you want.
go. Yeah, a lot of it is again 504 stuff.
Yeah, 504 stuff. So the question is, sorry, I'm not wearing my contacts or glasses, so I'm looking very closely to see. Are 504s mainly beneficial for grade school? And the answer is no. They are primarily beneficial for every single kid in the United States from birth, from when they enter school, preschool until 12th grade. Almost more important as the kids get older, and I'm going to tell you why. Not more important, but important. If your child has a stomach ache during a standardized test, and a combination you can have on your 504 plan is stop the clock, something called stop the clock. And essentially that allows them to use the bathroom, but the time test stops and the time doesn't resume until they come back from using the bathroom. So for example, if Jude is having a reaction and I don't know it from celiac, although I'm sure a lot of you could relate that I blame essentially everything he has on celiac, but if he's having a reaction to celiac and he has to go to school that day and take a test, but he's going back and forth to the bathroom, a main accommodation I would get him is the clock stopped during all tests, includes classroom tests and standardized tests. So very, very important, different important. Elementary school, it's more about keeping them safe, washing their hands, and other various accommodations. And as they get older, it becomes more about accommodating them in case they don't feel well. And I also see one more for me. What you're asking for in the 504 plan is certain accommodations, like making sure your child washes their hands before they eat, making sure they have access to a clean surface, making sure if they take a test, the clock stops, and many others that in my coaching program we go through that are essential for your child's protection. Someone wants to know, Dr. John or Dr. Allie, should we buy gluten-free shampoos, etc.? So
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk from any personal experience on that, Stacy.
So the answer is technically you need to ingest the gluten. I think you both would agree with that to have the response. There are
Correct.
some individuals that I work with that are highly sensitive. And if they're using shampoo and it dribbles in their mouth, like, you know, when you're showering and the water comes off, that could be a problem. So far for us on a personal level, that has not been a problem. But I could understand if you wanted to use a gluten-free shampoo, especially for a girl with long hair, how that could be beneficial to 100% make sure they are not ingesting any gluten. Would you guys agree?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it would have to be ingested for it to be a problem. But you're right. You know, in the shower, you never know if there's even a little bit that got ingested that mixed in with the water. So it's probably to err on the side of caution, probably would be better there.
And by the way, on this topic of products, there is gluten in a lot of toothpaste. So we do buy specific. Sure.
It's called Hello. They're very good with gluten-free, and they have like all different flavors if your kid wants a different flavor, or if you just want a toothpaste, Hello is a good brand for gluten-free toothpaste.
I would agree. I would agree.
Very good insight. Dr. Allie, how do we get enough calcium-rich foods when the child is also dairy-free?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that's when the label reading component comes in. So for example, if let's say they're going to switch from cow's milk to, let's say, almond milk. Well, one, of course, you want to make sure it's gluten-free. But then secondarily, you want to read the label and you can see how much calcium has been fortified into the almond milk. So typically in a lot of standard brands, they'll put the same 500 milligrams of calcium in the almond milk as they would as what's in the dairy milk. Now, it's a different conversation of this if it's as absorbable. But that's where you start. You would start with the package of products and you would look for dietary sources of calcium. Of course, you can get some calcium in green veggies and you know, foods that sit in calcium mediums like tofu and so on. But it is a little bit harder, but then it comes to really, you have to kind of analyze your kid's total nutrient intake, and then you need to start looking into the packages and, you know, counting milligrams to get closer to their need. Now,
Okay.
prophylactic calcium supplements are not recommended at any age, so you would go to, you know, your doctor first, before, you know, jumping straight to supplements, because you can look into fortified foods first.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Alley. One more question for you, Dr. Alley. Somebody that put in there that they submitted a question about cheese. How do we determine which is gluten-free when none are labeled?
So it is tricky. Sometimes you can look for the manufacturer, and sometimes you have to go the additional step. If you can't just look at the package, you have to look at the manufacturer. I mean, if it's there are, you know, if it's just like, for example, you know, a hard cheese, it's really depends. You have to kind of take the extra step and look, to see if you can get a little bit more information on it. You know, a dairy product in general, if it's just, you know, the only ingredient is dairy and there's nothing else in it, of course, you know, there is no gluten containing products, but then you need to take the extra step to make sure it's not manufactured in a factory that's simultaneously going to, you know, make something that has a wheat derivative in it. So that's when, you know, you got to play detective a little bit.
Seems challenging for that.
It can be, and you know, it does take, there's certain things that are not labeled, and you will get, well, it doesn't look like there's any gluten in here. I hear that a lot, and that's when you do have to take the extra step to confirm it, especially if it's something that's being ingested daily. And another thing that Staci talked about is oftentimes in restaurants and parties and
Yes.
so on, I don't think there's gluten is not good enough of an answer. So there has to be some level of confirmation. Of course, we know that there's always errors that can happen.
And grated, there's a difference between grated cheese, because sometimes, hold on, don't press anything, please. Because sometimes when things are grated, they're caked with things in order so that it doesn't stick together, and that binding contains gluten sometimes in cheeses.
I see a question that says, is there a difference in the label reading gluten-free versus free from gluten? Staci, I don't know if you have an answer for that.
So the answer is, in the United States, as the law currently sits, there are independent certification, essentially, companies. And I can post, I'm not going to go through them all right now, the ones that test according to high standards, but it is a very dysregulated thing in the United States. Jude and I and Jude's partner, Jax, and his father, John, are actively working to try to change, out of the camera, some of the laws, because it is not black and white. That's my answer to you. It's not black and white. If a product is certified gluten-free in the United States, it generally meets the FDA requirements, but it's very complicated. So if you're concerned, I wouldn't say take any label. For example, Jude finds candy in the candy store and it just like writes the words gluten-free. That doesn't necessarily mean it's safe for celiac.
It doesn't say it's
Correct.
It has to say it's certified gluten-free to be like trustable.
100%. For us, our standards are not if a company just says they're gluten-free, because we don't know if that really covers cross-contamination well enough. So
Right.
if it's certified gluten-free, we would trust it. That's my long-winded answer and Jude's long-winded answer.
Yeah,
to
and I
that
think
one.
that's why my previous answer was a little, you know, wishy-washy, because the FDA does not regulate the title gluten-free the way they regulate other
Yes.
titles.
Yes,
So
Dr. Alley, we're almost
because,
there. We're working
yes,
very hard.
yeah, and because it's not regulated, there is, you know, some manufacturer freedom. Also, keep in mind it's going to be the same with supplements. No supplement is FDA regulated, so secondarily testing for gluten is not mandatory. which takes then the additional steps of, you know, really having to advocate and look and so on.
Someone asked a question to Jude and he said he's willing to
Yeah.
answer it.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up next. So, question for you, Jude: how did you go about explaining celiac disease to your friends?
So I would call in advance to the parents. My mom would call in advance and say, hey, is by any chance there gluten-free food at that place? And if there is, can you order it for me or can I pay for it? And also maybe you could do something everybody else wants. Say they get like a cookie cake, and then you can have this whole gluten-free chocolate cake to yourself while they have to split the cookie cake in pieces. So it's actually sometimes better to have celiac disease than not have celiac disease.
I'm sorry, but I love you so much.
That was awesome, Jude. Great job.
You
That
make
was
me
good
very
one.
proud.
All right, I think we kind of covered just about it all there. I want to thank you so much for all your insights, and thank you to everyone who has taken the time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. We hope that this was helpful to you. If you want to stay connected to all of us, you can follow us all on social media and on our websites.
Yes. And thank you both so much. I just want to add, I am personally, my kids are patients, and I think that both of your care is really the best of the best, and I have really enjoyed doing this with both of you. You're experts in your field, and Jude and I couldn't get through this without both of you, so thank you.
You're welcome. Those are very kind words. Thank you, Staci.
Thank
You
you.
did great things too.
Yep. And Staci, you are, you know, a pioneer for a mother that is, you know, doing everything you can to guarantee your kids' success.
Thank
So
you.
you guys are a great team. And Jude, it's so awesome to see you really talk to kids and really be, you know, such a positive role model for celiac disease.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Good night, everyone.
Good
All
night.
right, guys, after we close out the webinar, there's going to be a quick questionnaire that's going to appear on screen, and we'd love to hear your own feedback. We definitely want to continue these type of events and make them useful and meaningful to you all. So your commentary is very important to us. And I just want to thank you all so much and have a great night.
Good night.